Hello, this is Deanna Bush, and I want to talk to you about how to make a good, high-quality bar graph. Now, this is not a tutorial on just how to make a bar graph or how to make it look great. It's on how to choose your information. There are plenty of tutorials out there you can use if you're not sure how to make a bar graph. About.com does several great tutorials which you're going to be able to use for your database assignment, for just about anything for this class. There are even tutorials on YouTube if you prefer to have somebody walk you through it and listen to the instructions as you do it yourself. But perhaps the best source of information for making graphs and using Excel, especially Excel 2007, is Microsoft Office's website. If you go to support and you look up graphs, you will find all of these wonderful sites on how to use your charts and how to create charts. They even have online courses you can take on how to make these charts. Today what we're going to look at, though, is how to choose your information wisely. The biggest mistake I see in charts for this class are mistakes such as this. This is a bar graph. This is a very hard to read bar graph. When you take your data and simply highlight the entire data table and create a bar graph, this is how it turns out. So while it is technically a bar graph and technically has all the information, this assignment would still get a 0 because it fails the final test, which is, does it perform the function of a graph? The function of a graph is to present information visually so that the reader can clearly and quickly understand what's going on. In this case, all I see are a big old mess of lines, and it's very hard to read because it doesn't perform the function. It can't get any points. It's sort of like having a car where all the parts are there, but it just doesn't run. At the end of the day, that car is useless to you, as is a graph like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how that bad data is created. Again, if you just do the easy way, which is selecting all and making a graph out of it, this is what you get. If you want to be a little more creative with it, you get something like this. Still very difficult to read. And then just to show you how it looks in other variations, here's a line graph with too much information, and here's a radiograph with too much information. When you have too much information on your graph, it is no longer clear. It is better to have 9 separate graphs with one category each that are clear and easy to read than one graph with all 9 that is just difficult to read. If I wanted to spend time looking through the data, I would ask you to put it in paragraph form. However, here I want you to be able to create an effective chart. So let's look at how you do that. The easiest way to make that chart effective is to simply get rid of much of the data. Instead of doing all 9 categories, why not highlight and do just the first category? If you do that, you get something that looks like this. In this case, I still see one category over here and all the names over here, but because it's only one category, I can really easily see that 4 students did poorly, 2 students got a 2, 2 got a 3, 3 earned a 4, and 2 earned a 5. There is no way I could so quickly tell that from this graph here. So by simply highlighting just that first category, I've built a graph that is easy to understand. The only changes I would suggest the author of this graph make are to make it so it's easier to read the names and perhaps spell out the category in the legend so that I knew exactly what it was, again, at a glance. Now, you could even use, let me go back. You can even take and highlight the 2 categories and compare the students' scores on them. This is very useful for a pre and a post test. When I do that, I get something that looks like this. And here what we can see is that Ashley Baker, for example, scored a 1 on category 1, but scored a 4 on category 2. So we can see the growth of each individual student very quickly at a glance. And we can even tell who stayed the same and who improved, again, quickly and at a glance. And all I did was highlighted both columns of data. Now I'm going to show you a couple of other things. Here's your basic chart with one column. Here's the same chart turned sideways. This may be more interesting to some of you, but it's basically the same data, and it's very clear and easy to read. Here I've grouped the assignments together so I can see how people did in pre and post. And here I've done something a little different. I've taken the 2 assignments and I've made each student a category. And what that does is that allows me to look at Category 1 and Category 2 as groups that are separate, and really visually it's very easy to tell that there are quite a few students who did better on Category 2 than Category 1. So all of these that I've shown you basically really simplified the chart and took 1 or 2 columns of information. So this, this, and this, and this are all great ways to do this assignment. This is not, and this, which is the most common mistake I see, is not, because remember, the purpose of a chart is to show simply and easily exactly what the reader needs to know.